It's 89.9 The Lights. Positive, it's uplifting. It's the Shaley and Rob Show on your drive home. Joined in the studio by Louise East, our motherhood matrescence expert. You can find her on Instagram at Louise East Coaching and Consulting. You've changed your name. You added consulting to it.
No, I didn't.
I'm looking at it. Oh, no, you didn't. You're helping mothers navigate career, motherhood, and identity, and you're a coach, speaker, and facilitator. So you join us once a week.
Yes.
And our audience send in questions. Are you ready for your first question?
Please.
This question comes from Caitlin.
How can I help prioritise myself, but I'm exclusively breastfeeding?
It's a good question, Caitlin. And at this stage of life, of your baby's life, they need you constantly. It can be really hard to know what self-care looks like at this stage. And not only that, at this stage, you're often not getting enough sleep either. So that compounds the problem about, how do I even think about what I need?
Yeah.
I can't think. I'm so tired. So it is a really demanding season. And not only that, the baby's needs are so immediate and visible. That makes it even harder to think about your own because they're not in your face. They're sort of easier to put to the side, right? I guess what I would be asking Caitlin if she was here with us is what does prioritising yourself mean to you?
Yeah.
Because there's so many ways that we can prioritise ourselves. So what would it mean for you, Shaylee?
Well, I was exclusively breastfeeding for a time, and I think we came to the realization of we came to the agreement because I felt like it was all on me. Because like you said, you're waking up all through the night, you're not getting a lot of sleep, and there's not much my husband could do. And so we did share that in a sense. Like he did all the nappy changes and I did the breastfeeding. So that really helped. He also slept in the lounge room, I think, for the first month of Banks's life with Banks.
Love that.
So that I could sleep. Because that's what I needed desperately. I am a girl, oh my gosh, before babies, I was like a 10-hour-a-night girl. Like I need my sleep. And I just can't. I find it really hard when, there's other people in the room, especially a brand new child. And so I think that's how I prioritized myself, making sure I did whatever I could just to get a few extra hours of sleep. So he would come in, I'd feed, he would take Banks, change the nappy, come back, I'd do the other side, and he would put Banks to bed.
Did you ask for that? Or did he... because I'm not going to speculate on Caitlin's relationship. I have some guy friends who were at the ready to help their wives who were breastfeeding, and I have other guy friends who refused to get up in the middle of the night. Some of them were asked for help, some of them weren't.
I didn't sleep for 4 days straight when Banks came along. I did not sleep. So I was not good. I was not in a good place. And I'm like, we need to do something because I'm not sleeping. It's been 4 days. So that's when we came to the idea.
So you asked for that?
Yeah. And then Dan just kept checking in and going, do you need me to stay in the lounge room? And we just kind of, took it day by day.
I think you've raised a really important point here because firstly, sometimes desperation leads us to understand what our needs are, but we do need to know what it is we need to be able to prioritise that. And then sometimes we have to ask for what we need. And I know women are always saying to me, why don't they just know? But they don't know.
They don't know.
And often, especially if it's your first child, you haven't been through this before. And actually, even if it's a subsequent child, it may be a completely different experience. So nobody knows. You don't even know until you're in that situation. But if you think about the different ways that you can prioritize yourself, it might be something like a basic need of sleep or food, like you need to eat, you need connection, or you need someone to help care for you. But it could also be something like you want to feel more joy. So you need something that brings joy to your life. You need those moments of lightness in amongst all the responsibility and change. So how do you do things that are important to you or make you feel joyful? It could be, how do you feel a bit more like yourself outside of your role as mum? So maybe prioritising you means you get to do one of your interests or you get to have a conversation with a friend that isn't about your child or whatever it might be, or prioritising your voice, which is really asking for what I need or being able to honestly share about my reality. Maybe I need that really vulnerable conversation. Maybe I need to say no to something. So there's lots of things that we can prioritise, or ways we can prioritise ourselves. One way to think about it is, what is making my current situation hard?
Yeah, that's great.
And then that's the thing that I need to solve for.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's so good.
What advice would you have? Because obviously I can't help out in this scenario. And I know it's quite isolating, 2 a.m. sitting in the breastfeeding chair in a dark room because you don't want to wake your baby up, and it's just you, and maybe your husband's sleeping in the corner. Now, I woke up, changed my daughter's nappies in the middle of breastfeeding. I felt guilty. I wanted to try and do something to help out, but I know that there are mums whose husband aren't in the room with them and aren't doing that either for work or whatever. Maybe they've got a different arrangement. If the mum's not getting help at all, what can she do for herself?
At night you're talking about?
When she's alone, she's in the room, it's all on you. How can a mum help herself in that scenario?
Oh gosh, that is really tricky. I mean, my first piece of advice would be, have you actually asked for what you need? Yeah. Have you had a conversation with someone that can help you? And then if not, how can you relieve other areas that make that a little bit easier to deal with if you really can't change that? So what is it that you can do to get to bed earlier, or what is it that you can do to get a rest during the day? Is there someone that can help you during the day that means you can have a nap? Sometimes, and in this early phase of motherhood, it's not necessarily about getting away from the baby to have time and prioritise yourself, but it might be getting someone to be with you to take some of the other pressures away so that you can care for the baby and care for yourself. And it's care for baby and care for self.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very can't drink from an empty cup.
No.
I know I can relate to you not sleeping for 4 days because my son went through a period where he woke up every hour, every night.
Oh my gosh.
And I just could not function.
Yeah. Yeah. I think coming from the hospital, my adrenaline was just so high and my anxiety was so high, I could not come down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So for Caitlin, who's exclusively breastfeeding, and she's asking, how can I prioritise myself? What's the main focal point for you, for her? What if she could focus on one thing, because it sounds like she's a bit under it. What's the thing, if it was you, that you would be doing?
If it was me, I think it's a hard question to answer because I don't know what she means by prioritising herself, right? So I think the answer is really you have to ask yourself what you need.
Yeah.
There's no, I can't prescribe what she needs. That's the trickiness with this question.
And breastfeeding is hard.
Yeah.
It is so hard. A girlfriend of mine, her baby is born the exact same day of Banks, except a year younger, and they've just hit this phase where she's starting to go through exactly what we went through. Like, the weight of the baby is dropping, they're triple feeding, breastfeeding's hard, there's tongue ties, there's latch issues. It is so stressful. It is so stressful. And when you're exclusively breastfeeding, you feel like literally all this pressure is on you. Yeah. If this baby isn't performing, you feel like it's your fault. And so I think, Caitlin, again, it's so hard to know exactly what you need, but I think you definitely need to take the pressure off yourself and know that for the right now, this is a season and it will absolutely pass. You might think that it won't. I have been there and it felt all consuming and it felt like it was going to swallow me whole. But it does pass. Yeah. And just finding those little joys. If it is, I was on the couch thinking, well, at least I can watch a show in the middle of the night. When was the last time I did an all-nighter and just got to binge watch my favourite show? And I did eat a lot of chocolate. I ate a block a day. Yep, the scales told me later that did hit. But I just did little things that definitely made me feel better in the immediate. Yeah.
I think that's what you have to do. You just have to think about how do I feel right now? What is making things really hard for me right now that I can get support with or that I can solve because I still have to breastfeed. Yeah. My baby still needs to be with me. But don't discount the little things. We might think about self-care or prioritising ourselves as being something big and grand and getting away for a day and that's not possible, so we feel like we're missing out. But little moments where you prioritise yourself and make yourself feel a little bit more refreshed, a little bit better, a little bit more normal, if there is such a thing, then those things all add up. So if you think about a bucket, right? Think about a bucket and it's got one of those taps in the bottom where you get the water out. And if you so all the stress and all the pressure all day is filling up the bucket. Yeah. If you never release that tap and let some pressure out, you are going to overflow.
Yeah.
with pressure and tension and all of that. So you want to just throughout the day, in as little moments as you need to, just release that valve and let some pressure out.
Yeah.
And, you know, keep going for the moment, knowing that there is an end to this season.
Yeah, so good. Thank
Very
you,
good.
Louise.
Louise, are you ready to tackle it?
Yes, let's go.
Because it's a big one.
Oof.
Here we go.
Hey Louise, I desperately need help, but whenever someone offers, I hear myself saying, I'm fine, or I feel guilty accepting it. Why is it so hard to let people help me?
Good luck.
I also second this question. Why is it so hard, Louise?
You wouldn't be the only one. This is actually a question I hear on repeat. So if you're thinking, if anyone is out there thinking I can relate, know that you're not alone in this. This is very, very common. And it's so hard because you feel like the help is there, but it feels just out of reach because you don't feel like you're allowed to have it. You don't feel like it's safe to have it. So that makes it really difficult. I think receiving help can feel really uncomfortable and vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's totally different to asking for help. Those are two different skills that I work with women on, asking for help and receiving help or accepting help.
Please.
Why is
explain.
it so difficult?
And why are they so different?
Is it almost like an admission that you're struggling?
Yes.
Is that why it's tough?
That is one reason. So there are a number of reasons that this can feel really difficult, and one of them is exactly that. I think we confuse needing help with failing. So when we need to accept help or ask for help, this applies to both, we feel like we're saying, I'm struggling, I can't cope by myself.
Yeah.
And we know that the dominant thinking around motherhood in our society is that mothers should be able to cope, no help, do it all themselves with ease. In fact, it should come naturally. That's not the truth. That's the myth around motherhood. So we have got this in our subconscious. Plus, many of us have been rewarded through our lives for being capable. That's how we're successful in our jobs, in the other parts of our lives. So we identify with that. I'm capable, I can manage things, I'm successful. And then we come into this completely disorienting situation where we actually do need help, and that's completely fine. And we think that means there's something wrong with me.
What are the differences between asking and accepting?
Yes. Well, I think sometimes we can ask for help. No, you know, we might be able to ask for help, but sometimes when it's uninitiated and someone's saying, "Can I help you?" that can trigger different feelings.
Because I suppose when you're asking, you've gotten to the point where you've realised, I do need it.
Yes.
Got it. But when you're accepting it, you haven't gotten to that point yet.
Maybe it could be either, right? So for the person who's asking and then somebody says, yes, I'll do that, then that can feel one way. But it's a different situation if you haven't initiated it and then somebody says to you, can I help you? And I've had many like nice arguments with my friends when I'm saying, please let me help you. And they go, no, it's fine. You're so busy. And I'm saying, no, I'm offering to help you.
Yeah.
So this is another reason that people often find it hard to accept help, is because we think that we're inconveniencing people.
Yeah. That's my biggest one.
Yeah, women are conditioned not to inconvenience people or to be a burden. So if we think we're going to create a burden for someone else, we're like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
It's very uncomfortable. But I think here that is a social idea again. That's conditioning, right? You are allowed to have needs. You're allowed to get help. And I always talk to mums about what is your responsibility in that equation. So it is when you are deciding that somebody else will find your need inconvenient or a burden, you're making a decision for them that is actually theirs to make.
That's so good.
They get to decide whether they can manage helping you.
Yep.
Not you.
Yep.
So your responsibility is either to ask for help, to say this is what I need, or to accept help or not. That is offered to you. But you don't need to decide about whether they have capacity or whether they feel like you're an inconvenience. They're going to decide that.
So true. That's why any text message to a friend where I need help is like sprinkled with, I'm so sorry. It's totally fine if you can't. Please, I don't want to be a burden. Please let me know if you can't do this. Just tell me. But it would be really great, but totally fine if you can't.
Yeah, right.
Just making sure.
If you needed to say that, you probably could just say it once.
I know. Littered.
But it's really normal. Like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
You're definitely not the only one doing that. But can you see that it's taking a responsibility that is someone else's and making it out?
I think that's one of the things I found so humbling with becoming a mum is accepting help. I have been the kind of person, like you said, not alone, that I really will do whatever I can before I ask for help. Like that is the literal last choice. And being open for help was so refreshing. Like having people come and help us was, oh my gosh, it just makes you, first of all, it just makes your heart burst to see the community you have around you. Like Meal Train, I will not stop singing Meal Train's praises.
They're
Meal Train
amazing.
is amazing. And I felt so guilty, though, still having people, some people I didn't even know, drop off food at my house because I'm like, but I'm home. Like, I could technically cook, you know? Like, I could technically go and get food. But having someone drive out of their way and do that was just the kindest thing that honestly has ever happened. And yes, it was actually still hard to accept the help, but accepting it felt really freeing. In a way.
I once saw a Facebook post where a woman who was about to have a baby and she just posted in a group, I'm about to have a baby. Would anybody be willing to cook meals for me?
Wow.
To strangers. And I thought that is so
amazing.
courageous.
Very courageous.
I loved it.
Very courageous.
Imagine if that was just generally acceptable.
Yes, exactly.
Just in your, it's funny, isn't it?
Be.
In our friendship groups, that should be a thing that we can just do.
Yes.
But we genuinely don't want to put people out. No. Or is there the fear as well that we think our friends may say, no, I'm not going to help you?
I thought you were about to say I'm very good cook.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's valid too.
Yeah.
And then that's how we feel about rejection. That's a form of rejection. So what do we make that mean about us? Do we make it mean that they don't value us? Do we make it mean that I am a burden? So there can be a lot of underlying messages that we take from that aren't necessarily there, but we read into the situation that makes that potential rejection really scary.
Yeah.
I've got a question. You said that very difficult to ask for help. Mm-hmm. My wife is horrendous at asking for help. Shaylee, like you said, it's lone wolf, boil over.
Yeah.
For the guys playing along at home, what does new mum or even a female partner asking for help look like? Because we go, if you want help, just ask for it.
Ooh.
And I know it's not helpful.
No.
But if my friend says, I'm building a deck, he'll text me and say, I'm building a deck. Can you come over? There's there's no blurring of the lines.
That's true. You guys are always doing manual labour for each other.
So what does a female partner or a new mum asking for help actually look like if the words aren't specifically I need help?
I don't, as a partner of a mother, especially in the early years of parenting when things are really intense, but look, this applies at any stage, I think we should be sharing all the responsibilities.
Oh, yeah.
So I wouldn't be looking for signs that someone needs help. I'd just be doing it anyway because
look
you're
around.
equal partners. I can't remember where I read it, but I often say, much to the irritation of my husband, notice and do.
It's beautiful. I'm going to get it tattooed onto me. Notice and do.
And my husband does do a lot. So, but it's kind of become a bit of this joke. Notice and do. Nobody needs me to tell them to do anything. A lot of the things that need doing around the home and in families are recurring tasks.
Yep. That will actually work for guys.
Great. Notice and do. There you go.
Genuinely.
So we've spelled it out for you.
If guys, if you're listening and your partners have started to beg for some extra help, it's because you've not been noticing and you've not been doing. So, and I'm guilty of this. Sometimes, my wife now almost exclusively puts my daughter to bed because it got so difficult. She just refused me. So now my wife is doing it all, and I'm trying to do other things around the house. But on the weekend, we were bickering, and I think I am guilty of noticing and not doing.
Yeah.
I mean, there are going to be signs if there are if she's feeling overwhelmed, there will be signs. She might be irritable. She might make little remarks, oh, that's nice that dish is still there after all these hours. She might leave things in the walkway for you to notice. I don't know. There's probably a million things I'm thinking about.
There are signs, though.
That basket in the
about
lounge room,
myself.
I've been using it as a foot rag. rest.
Yeah.
I've got to put the clothes away. I've got to put them away.
I saw this excellent reel once, and again, I can't remember exactly what account it was from, but it was like this woman who put on a pair of glasses. So the room was messy. Then she put on her husband's glasses.
Oh, stunning.
And then suddenly the room was crystal clean.
Beautiful.
Beautifully
like,
clean.
oh, this is what it's like.
Guys, notice.
And do.
And notice and
and
do.
do.
Stunning.
It's very, very good. I'm about to be really busy.
Yeah.
I joke, of course, but seriously, guys, I think we need to probably do a little bit better at noticing and doing.
Yeah, I mean, a proactive conversation around how can we better share the load in our family and in our home is also good, right? Because then it's very clear. But I think one of the things that women find the most frustrating, a conversation I have on repeat, is who is remembering to do all the things. Who is keeping track of what's coming? Who is anticipating things that are happening? It's not just the doing of the task. It's the remembering that there's a birthday party coming up and we have to buy a present. It's remembering that your child is about to outgrow their uniform and they're going to need that in so many weeks. And it's all those things. It's remembering that today there's a sausage sizzle at school and they need $2. Who's remembering those things? Because those are the things that women are feeling really overwhelmed about.
Yeah, that's the mental load right there.
Yeah, the mental load.
Louise, just so we can all confirm, it's okay to ask for help.
It is okay to ask for help.
Amen.
There's one other quick thing, if that's
course.
okay for me to say. Sometimes women don't want to ask for help because they think that getting help requires or creates more work. So they think they have to explain things.
Yes, this is why I do all the cooking, because Dan, it's more painful for me to sit there and have him cook. Sorry to cut you off, but just
No,
one
it's
second. Because he's like, but how much pepper do I put in? But how much salt? But how much? So I would rather just do it. Right, then sit there and have to answer all his questions from the couch.
So
Anyway.
that's an example of mental load versus the
Yeah.
physical load, right? He's doing the task, but you're doing the thinking.
Yes.
So you want to outsource the whole thing. Otherwise, it's
Correct.
not off your plate and it doesn't
Correct.
create relief. So it might be because women think they have to explain everything. It might be because they have to fix it later because it wasn't done the way that they wanted it done.
Yeah.
And it might be because they feel like they have to reciprocate. So those are some things that I hear from women all the time. But I would encourage you to challenge those assumptions if that's what you're thinking. Maybe you didn't, did we explain it properly? Is my standard really necessary, or can I cope with what they've done? Does it have to be done one way? Is it worth explaining if it's something that recurs regularly and then I actually do save myself time in the future? And, relationships don't always have to be exactly equal in terms of reciprocity either, as long as both parties are happy with the arrangement. So don't feel like it's tit for tat or, I have to pay back every hour that's given to me.
Yeah.
Oh, this is an
That is
absolute
so
can of worms, this one.
helpful. I love it.
If my wife asks me for help, my way is okay.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you don't know my way.
I think it depends on what your way is and what the task
Oh,
is
I
and
guess
how
so.
meaningful it is.
But do you know what I mean? Like, if you ask me to do something, this is just, for me, if you ask me to do something, you can't be looking over my shoulder and micromanaging it. Because that's not doing anything for either of us, is it?
I agree with that, yes. That causes relationship strain.
Definitely. Yeah. Sorry, someone very close to me had this issue. She had pretty bad postnatal depression. And a way she was coping with that is to control everything she could control. So it meant she was doing literally everything when it came to the kids. Well, pretty much the whole household, because that's how she felt like she could control things. But it ended up getting to a point where you just can't sustain that level of stuff. You know what I mean? And so she ended up seeing a psychologist, which is fantastic. But they were like, let him make mistakes. Let him pack the lunchbox. Like, let your husband pack the lunchbox and forget the piece of fruit. Let him take them to the park and forget a jacket. Let him make mistakes because you need to let him do something.
Or let him do it and it'll be perfect because he wasn't going to leave the fruit. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But her worst fear was that, things weren't going to be done to a certain standard, her standard. But they were like, just let him take something on and take something off your plate and it's okay.
So we have one, yes, of course it's okay to ask for help. And two, you have to be willing to accept it.
Yes. And if there is a standard or a particular way that something needs to be done for a reason, not just because you like it better, but for a reason, then have that conversation up front. That's completely okay. There are some things that need to be done a particular way.
Yeah.
But make sure you explain it and why and get on the same page about that. But other times, sometimes it comes from anxiety a lot of the time. There's actually a word for it. It's called maternal gatekeeping. And we do this, we control things. Things have to be done our way, so no one else can do them. No one else, we can't let go of them. And there's different factors that contribute to that happening.
Yeah.
But we've got to ask ourselves, is it really necessary? Can I accept it?
Yeah.
Louise, you ready for your next question?
I am. Let's do it.
Here we go.
Hey Louise, so some of my friendships changed after I became a mom, and I still feel kind of sad about it. So is it normal to lose friends, or have motherhood really impact your friendships?
Such a good question. I love this. It's completely normal for your friendships to change in motherhood. And I do want to say it doesn't mean that you're a bad friend or that you're doing anything wrong. I think that's really important to say first. It's also really understandable that you would be sad about it because we can experience grief when friendships change or end. So, yes. In short, yes. Now the longer answer. One of the motherhood is one of the biggest identity transitions that we ever go through. So it's natural that our relationships are going to shift with that. And some will drift, some will deepen, and some will just not really fit anymore.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But it is hard. There's a number of reasons why our relationships change when we do become mothers. Firstly, our life practically changes. So we can't show up in the same way that we might have before. We also might talk about different things. We do different things. We go to different places. Our schedule is different. You know, all those things impact relationships. But also, if we think about it from a matrescence point of view, our priorities change, our values change, our identity changes. And sometimes that means that people that we clicked with really easily before may not feel so aligned anymore. And new people might feel more aligned. Like there might be somebody new that we can connect with. So those things all impact relationships. And I think the other thing to think about is that it isn't just us that's noticing that change. It's probably also our friend that's noticing that change, and they're interpreting it through their lens on the world as well.
Yeah.
So you might feel some of that shift from their side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've experienced pretty much everything. Some friendships deepening, some becoming more distant, and then some people just completely leaving as well, and having like grieving those lost friendships where we're in such completely different seasons. They've taken themselves out of the equation, I think, because we don't have maybe much in common anymore. And that's been really hard to navigate and to deal with. But I definitely do feel bad for all my friends who had babies before me.
Yeah.
I feel it really made me realize that I probably haven't been the most supportive, or I don't know, but it's so hard.
But what could you have done?
Well, exactly.
You didn't know.
Don't know until you know. You don't know what someone's going through until you go through a similar situation. But in reflection, I have been like, oh, there are things I could have done for them, and I do feel quite guilty.
Well, that's quite a good point, because this happens to the universal experience. We all have different kids at different times. Our friendship groups. I was pretty much the last guy in my group to have kids. So there was a moment there, and I'm not immune to this. There was a moment there where I felt like all my mates weren't putting in a good enough effort with me because I was the only one without kids. Now being a dad, like you said, I realised they just had no time.
Yeah.
They had no time, but I was blaming them for not stepping up to the plate, and they were probably blaming me for going, he has all the time in the world. Why isn't he making more time
Yes,
for
that's
us?
it.
So there is that universal experience of we're all blaming each other at the same time.
We're taking it personally.
Yeah.
We take it personally, and we make it mean something about us or our other friendship, when really it's just life situation.
So true.
And different perspectives. And I have similar reflections on friends who had children before I did, and I definitely can see that there are things I could have done differently, or even just the way I perceive things could have been different.
For sure.
Yeah.
And even I'm trying to make a conscious effort, especially with my friends who don't have kids now, knowing what that's like to be around everyone who has a child and you're the only one who doesn't.
And we're all talking about how cute they
all
were.
We're talking about is sleep and feeding schedules and exhaustion, and they have not a lot to contribute to the conversation. I am making a far bigger effort to be like,
There's
let's
nothing
not
wrong
just
with
feed
that,
each other.
though. There's nothing wrong with
No.
that. That's just what you were saying. That's just you've changed.
Yeah, your attention has shifted.
Yeah.
And so how much do you beat yourself up, and how
Yeah,
much do you
that's true.
censor your own content to try and salvage this friendship over here.
Yeah, I think genuine friendship comes from mutual, genuine interest.
Yeah.
So if you really care about the relationship, then making an effort to find out what's going on in their world and talk about things outside of your family might be a really good thing to do. But sometimes we're trying to save friendships that really are just not fitting anymore. And I think we need to recognise that friendships don't have to last a lifetime. You can have friendships for a season, and that can be beautiful and positive, and they can fade away. You don't have to have some big breakup, dramatic conversation, but sometimes they just fade a little bit, you know, or they move to a different type of relationship where you might not see each other. And I think sometimes we equate the frequency of connection in terms of how meaningful that friendship is, but less interaction can still be a really meaningful relationship, still a really meaningful friendship. I have friends, I grew up in Sydney, I'm in Melbourne now, and I have friends who I get to see maybe once a year. And because life is really busy, you know, we're not talking on the phone every week either. But when I see those people, I feel like no time has passed. I love them dearly.
Yeah.
So it hasn't made that friendship any less meaningful.
Yeah.
To me, that I, you know, now that I don't see them as much, or the dynamic is different.
Yeah.
We definitely got pretty good at beating ourselves up, didn't we?
Yes.
Making ourselves feel guilty
Yes.
about not putting time into friendships. And we all know that we have a friend where the relationship's changed and we're clinging on. Like, it's on life support and we're doing everything we can.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much effort do you put in? How much do you drain yourself to try and save it?
Well,
When you know over here, it's already been quite difficult, and this is not fitting anymore in my life.
Yeah.
You don't need to have the conversation, do you? Sometimes you can just organically drift.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's fine. That's just part of it.
Absolutely. I am really big on relationships feeling like everybody's contributing. And if a relationship is very, very draining, and I'm not talking for a short period, because, you know, friends go through difficult times and you might give them more than that time, and then another time they might give you more. But if ongoing it is draining you all the time, then I'd be really asking yourself, why is this something that you are perpetuating?
Yeah.
Because we need things that energize us and are positive in our lives, and people who drain us are not always the best fit.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, so it's not like you need to cut the cord. Maybe one day they'll, you know, full circle moment. I guess for us new parents, if I've lost a friend, it's not say lost a friend, but if I've drifted from a friend, it's because they're not parents anymore. And so I don't have as much in common.
Yeah.
And most of it's to do with time.
And scheduling,
but
for
when
sure.
they become parents, if they become parents, they will understand what I went through, and then we'll probably
You could
reconnect.
reconnect. Absolutely. Absolutely. And not every friendship needs to fulfill every need either.
Yeah.
So you might have one friend that you connect with over a particular thing that you both love to do, and you might have another friend that you connect with over your children because your children are at similar stages. So you can get different things from different friendships. They don't all have to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Louise.
Thank
all
you.
right.
That
Louise.
probably just released, I mean, last week we spoke about the pressure valve. Probably released a fair bit of pressure on people there who were, you know, fighting to see as many people as they possibly could, but sometimes it's just not realistic.
It's not. And I think too, if you feel courageous enough, a proactive conversation with the friends that you really value about how your world has changed and how it is hard for you to do what you used to do is really worthwhile.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's not the conversation of saying we can't be friends anymore. That's
No.
saying this is my
This is
new
where I'm at.
reality.
Yeah,
Totally.
I value you as a friend, and I know I'm not able to catch up with you as much, or I don't respond to your text messages as quickly. That's only because I'm consumed with my baby. It's really taking a lot out of me, or my family is very busy, but I value you and I want us to be friends, and I promise I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Are you ready for your next question from Sarah?
I am ready.
It's a big one, tough one, almost a universal experience.
Great.
Hi Louise, I'm exhausted, but whenever I try to rest, I feel lazy or like I should be doing something more productive. How do I switch that off?
If only there was a switch.
If only. If only.
I mean, I would have used it myself because I can really relate to this one. There's no switch, unfortunately. But I know this is very relatable, and lots of mums will get something out of this. Many mums feel uncomfortable when they're not being productive. Me too.
Yeah.
Less
Same.
these days, but yes, definitely have had that experience. And why? So I think there's a couple of different reasons. One of them is that we believe that rest has to be earned. So I certainly used to believe this one. Work before play was a motto in my household.
Okay.
Use every moment wisely.
Yep. Yep.
So the problem with that in motherhood is that the to-do list created by motherhood is never ending.
Yeah.
So if you think you need to do everything before you get to do anything for yourself, you literally will never get there.
Yep.
Never.
Yep.
And then if you try to do something for yourself before you get to that point, then you feel guilty because you're thinking, oh, but I haven't done everything. So guilt really drives a lot of the avoidance of resting in that instance. The other thing is some people will say, I haven't done enough to earn my rest. But what is enough? That is a very subjective term. And whenever I ask women what is enough, they can't answer that question.
Oh, my gosh.
This is, I know that this is a pain point for so many couples because I can tell you guys do not operate on we must earn rest.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not thinking, my brain does not
Really?
think that way. It's
Oh,
work
what a
hard,
dream.
play hard, but if I'm not at work, I'm playing hard.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And there is so much to do that's on my wife's list that I am not conscious of it. I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's really hard too. A lot of women say to me, their partners will say, well, just sit down. Just have a rest.
Like guilty.
They cannot do that.
It's so hard.
It's not that easy.
It's really not easy at all.
How do we make it easier for you?
Oh, gosh. Rest has to feel safer, I think. We have to work on making rest feel safer for ourselves and not a threat to our enoughness, if you like.
Yeah.
Because we tie our productivity to our self-worth. Just the other day, a mum said this to me. She said, I love being useful. When I'm useful, I'm valuable, like I feel valuable. And that's what we do. She was able to articulate it, but a lot of women haven't actually consciously had that thought, but it's in there, right? So I need to be looking after my family. I need to be doing things because that's what gives me value.
Yeah. Wow.
It's actually quite heartbreaking
That's
to
so,
hear.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yep.
It can be quite deep, so you may not be aware of it, but I invite women to think about whether that's something that they may have learned in the past. Often it comes from earlier in life. The other thing, just in terms of the way our attention is trained in motherhood, because, matrescence shifts out the way our brain operates. We spend so much time being responsible for everybody and everything. Our minds don't know how to switch off straight away. So we've become very hypervigilant. We're always looking for what's the next priority, what's the need, what's the risks coming, what do I need to anticipate, what's not finished. So when we sit down physically, our brain is still scanning. It's not like our brain just sits down as well.
So exhausting.
Yeah,
Does that
exhausting.
explain why when my wife sits down, she's always playing like a brain training game on her phone? Because she's sitting down, but she's always doing something.
It's very hard. I think having phones, devices, has kind of made it worse.
Yeah.
Because it's given you an avenue to be doing something so accessible when sitting down, but none of that is actually, well, there may be some things that are restorative, but generally things on a device are not restorative for your brain. Unless maybe you're listening to a guided meditation or,
Well, I can't
there's
even
a few
get
apps.
I can't even get 10 seconds into a meditation. That's how much I struggle to rest.
Yeah.
And I'm as you've been talking, I've just been reflecting, and I've just realized, especially when I was on maternity leave, anytime I was quote unquote resting, I was still breastfeeding or I was still doing something, but because I was sitting, I was like, this is when I rest. But I'm still actively doing something.
Yeah. And I mean, rest can mean different things. So there are
Yeah.
different types of rest.
Yeah.
Which is a bigger conversation, but it doesn't always have to be doing nothing.
Yeah.
But I do think doing nothing is something that women need to practice these days.
Definitely, because I'll sit down and I'll do nothing and I feel so unbelievably guilty.
Yes.
Because I'm looking at everything else around the house and I'm like, well, so many other things need my attention.
And what does it mean about you if you are sitting and not attending to those things?
Yeah, well, that it just means that I am being lazy.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's those stories
Yep.
that, and I call them stories because stories can be fiction or non-fiction, and we run a lot of stories in our head. So those stories, I would suggest that is fiction.
Yeah.
That's not it. That's a fiction story that we've inherited somewhere along the line, that we need to be not lazy. We need to be productive all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what makes rest unsafe,
Yeah.
because we don't want to be lazy.
No.
I see a lot of memes on Instagram, and I enjoy them. I think they're very funny, where it is the most triggering sight to my wife is her husband resting.
So good.
I feel that one.
So how difficult is that?
It's so triggering.
If we're basically saying universal experience, ladies, mums, when you're sitting down, you're feeling like when I'm useful, I'm valuable.
Yeah.
Right? That's heartbreaking.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But like nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
So it almost makes it impossible for this to never be a pain point, does it?
Yeah.
When it's always going to be somewhat frustrating for you guys to see me sitting on the couch after work. Where you're like, is there anything we can do? I know the obvious answer is clear lines of communication. How can I help you? How can you help me?
But how do we break that cycle? How do we break that voice?
How do we help you rest?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like that's not happening.
Yeah, I think that's the reality for a lot of women. They're not getting enough rest. So there's a few things. There's the internal work that women need to do around why does rest feel unsafe for me?
Yeah.
How do I become more comfortable with the fact that I don't have to be always on to be enough? There's that. Then there's what actually are the real priorities that are in our household and family that need attending to that maybe somebody else can help with. So that's something for partners. Right? Because there might be actually some things that she is really worried about that have real consequences that other people are not aware of, because women are generally holding most of the mental load. So figure out what those things are. We either have to talk about them, ask for help, or partners can also initiate that conversation. And then I think it's practice as well. We need to practice, and maybe you can do it together sometimes, showing our brains that resting is not dangerous and that nothing bad will happen if I rest. So nobody thinks worse of me. Nothing terrible happens in my family. It's training your brain to feel safer in those situations. So maybe it's that as a partner, you might encourage your wife to do something with you that is more restful, because rest can be active too. It could be going for a walk. It could be sitting in the backyard having a chat. It could be make her a cup of tea and get her to sit down for just 5 minutes. And I would say start smaller than you think. If it's really uncomfortable, go for really, really tiny micro moments where you just allow yourself to pause and start with that and just observe what happens inside you. Do you feel discomfort rising in your chest? Do you feel like your breath contracts? What is happening? And start to talk to yourself and say, it is okay, it is safe, I am safe, I am allowed to rest. It takes a long time to unwind, but little by little, little shifts will give you the most sustainable change over time.
Yeah, that is such good advice.
I've only got one last question. Would it be beneficial to itemize your list? Like genuinely write it down.
The to-do list.
So I can see what is happening in your head.
Yes.
And then would it be dangerous for me to go through that list and go, that doesn't matter, not a priority, don't bother. Jokingly
don't do
you
it.
say this, but genuinely I would be looking at it going, is that the most important thing? Surely we could rest before we do that. I know, but I'm a guy.
I'm giving him a look.
I'm a guy.
Me too.
And this is how guys think.
I think your intention isn't bad, Rob.
No.
But I think the way you deliver that message is crucial.
100%. Okay, I love my husband. And it's just men in general. You guys are problem solvers. You want to solve a problem. I came to him with a problem that I did not want solved. I just wanted to talk. And so he told me,
but if I can
pretty
help
much the
you with
exact
your
same
problem,
thing, saying it doesn't matter. It's not a priority. Don't worry about it. It doesn't come across as nice. It comes across as like my feelings aren't valid.
Dismissive.
Exactly. That's exactly what I said to him. I feel like you're dismissing me.
Yeah.
You're not actually just hearing what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think understanding why something is important is really helpful. So why does she think it's important? And sometimes you don't have to agree on whether it's important. If it's important to her, then maybe it's still important. I think, take some of those things off her plate. But honestly, a proactive conversation, this comes back to something we've spoken about for other questions, a proactive conversation around the mental load and what's needing to be done in the home can help with this.
Yeah.
Rather than waiting to the point where she's overwhelmed and she's thinking, oh my gosh, I haven't sat down in hours. proactive is better.
Yeah.
So overarching sentiment is we need to try and make rest feel more safe.
Yeah.
Practice that it's not dangerous and that the world is not going to end if you guys do rest for 5 minutes.
Yeah, and that I have done that myself. So I had to practice and just say, you know what, it doesn't actually make any difference if I do this now or in an hour or tomorrow. Most of the things that you are trying to get done will still be there tomorrow.
The washing will still be there.
It'll still
Don't
be there.
worry about it.
In fact, it'll continue to
It'll
generate.
just get bigger. It's fine.
And pick your battle, right? Because some people say to me, if I don't do a washing load every day, it is unmanageable. And fair enough, maybe that's not your hill to die on.
Yeah.
But pick the things for you that can be left,
Yeah.
or maybe done to a lesser standard, or maybe you let somebody else do it even if they don't do it the way you like it.
Louise, thank you so
So
much. Guys, I tried to get the itemised list. It didn't work. So
I think the list is good. It's the execution of the
delivery.
conversation.
Yeah.
if you ever have any questions for Louise, please feel free to text them in to us on 0428 899 899, and you can connect with Louise on Instagram directly at Louise East Coaching. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love you, Louise. Thank you.